Uh, hello,
Hello. Hello.
hello, everyone. Welcome back to Curiosity Cove. My name is Veda.
And I'm your trusty captain speaking, and today we'll be doing Ghost
Spoopy
Stories
stories.
Part 2
Teehee.
edition.
Part two.
Part 2.
Lexi was supposed to join us, but she's a little tied up, so she sends her
Mm,
regards. But she will unfortunately not be able to make it today. Uh,
mhm.
no worries though, because we still have plenty of good stories for you. But before we
I'm
get
super
to
excited.
that, me too. Before we get to that, how was your day?
Uh, my day was pretty good. I woke up really
Okay,
weird.
you made me
You
nervous
ever
there.
No,
You
I
said,
like to actually think
ah.
and like give a good answer.
Yeah.
And I don't know if like you do that too if someone asks you like a how are you? But like over the years I've started like actually giving like good answers for how are you, not like
Oh,
a good.
I
Yep,
usually just say alive,
fine.
breathing.
I say that if it's like a draining day.
Oh,
Like I'm
yeah.
not really
That's
like
my
focused or
secret, Cap,
anything.
is all of my days are draining.
But no, today wasn't that bad. I just woke up really weird. I like felt super comfy in bed and then my alarm went off and I was
Mhm.
like, "Why? Like just give me 3 more hours." Like
Right.
but work was pretty chill. Got out on time, so that was good. I made tacos tonight, so tacos were so good. Um and then we have podcasts. And I was really excited for more ghost stories, I won't lie.
Yeah, I'm really really excited just because like last time I feel like me and Lexi got to focus so much on like our big experience together that I'm kind of
Yeah.
excited to share like the small experiences that I've had and like some
Mhm.
of the really weird stuff that's happened to me. I have like a lot of really teeny ones that I'm combining into like I guess categories.
Yeah.
But I'm also excited to hear what Reddit has to offer.
Yeah, for those of you who don't know, I don't whole have like a whole ton of like paranormal stuff that has happened to me. So I don't have a whole lot of those stories. So what I did today is I found a couple of Reddit ghost stories and I have them on our document and whatnot. Even during the week though, like leading up to this, I was trying to think of any other like spooky instances that I've had, and honestly, I cannot name one. Just that
Yeah.
story from last podcast. Also, if you missed it, please go ahead and check out part one. Um, I don't have any more. So I bring you Reddit stories.
Yeah. I'm totally fine with that. Sometimes Reddit's got some bomb ass stories on there waiting to be read, you know?
My
Yeah.
favorites are when Corpse Husband reads them.
Mhm.
Like those when he got really big back in 2020 during the Among Us stuff.
Mhm.
Um I hadn't heard of him before. And then his music was coming out, so I was like, okay, like let me go take a look at this guy. And I took Snoop through his YouTube, and obviously, like the original ones are a bit not as well done, if you will.
Mhm.
And so I liked listening to the later ones, and it's just the like eeriness and that cool like spooky twist he adds to them that just
Mhm.
make them sound so cool. I just love listening to them. They make my skin crawl.
Yeah. I feel that.
Mhm.
I feel
How
that for
was your
sure.
day though? How was your day?
So, so my day was kind of interesting because I know I asked you this beforehand, but Agatha all along is something I've been waiting to watch, and now that it's all out, I was like, oh yeah, I really want to binge it. And I thought that I could get away with watching it while at work because a lot of the Marvel shows have kind of been a well, I can listen to this, I don't exactly need to watch it kind of
Yeah.
thing, you know? It's so good that not only did it catch my attention, but it caught my coworker's attention to the point where we watched the entire thing together at work.
Oh my
I mean,
gosh.
barely anything got done because I just had my iPad between us and we were just like watching, and then like somebody would come in and we'd be like, "Yeah," and we'd pause it, and like it was very enthralling, but I cried my eyes out to it. It was great.
Mhm.
I love Catherine Hahn, so it was really
She's
fun.
amazing.
Yeah, she's incredible. And the
Mhm.
music is banger. So, yeah, I would highly recommend.
Did you
Um,
watch WandaVision?
I did. I've seen every Marvel show, even the bad ones.
Yeah. I you wait, you watched She-Hulk?
Unfortunately, yeah.
What would you rate it?
Oh, honestly, I'll give it a 4. Like, it's not a bad show. It's just that it's way too soap opera-ish.
Mm,
Like,
gotcha.
yeah, it's not my favorite. If I had to give a ranking, it would probably be Loki, Agatha, Falcon Winter Soldier, WandaVision.
What about the Hawkeye one?
That one I rate a solid 6. I think it's a great show. I just think that it's kind of like, I mean, it's a great way to introduce like a replacement for Hawkeye, but like I don't think it was needed, TBH.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, to be honest, no one really asked for these.
Right. But like there are
My
some
only
of them.
letdown. Go
Mhm.
ahead.
I was gonna say there are some of them that I feel like absolutely were necessary. Loki, absolutely necessary.
Oh,
Getting
100%.
getting the ending that he got is 100% necessary to everybody who loved him. I mean, like it. I can honestly say that him being completely gone from the MCU, like not being able to be in any of the movies or anything anymore, is now okay with me because of the show. So
Yeah.
that one I think is absolutely necessary. Falcon Winter Soldier I think is absolutely necessary. That show to me is so close to taking probably my number one spot. If I rewatch it again, it'll probably overtake both Loki and Agatha because seeing like the politics behind being a superhero and navigating like real life situations,
Mhm.
I mean that is a perspective that I feel like I want so much more of that
Mhm.
I'm probably not going to get, but like I do like I want more of that. So
Yeah.
I'm going to hold on to that little show for as long as I can cuz like watching Bucky deal with like PTSD and depression and coming to terms with who he is and watching like Sam Wilson figure out how everybody's going to accept him and the politics behind being Captain America and what it's going to mean if he tries to take up that mantle. Like that show was so charged with real life relatable situations that I was like,
Yeah, I
damn,
agree.
this is good shit. So
Mhm.
I think that one was necessary.
Yeah, I honestly think a lot of them are really good, but the one that I feel like got trashed because of a following movie was WandaVision.
And I feel
I
so
loved
bad.
WandaVision so much.
Yeah, I feel so bad for like the creators of WandaVision and everything because the show was so incredible.
It was
And then
so
I
well done.
and then I feel like they came out with Multiverse and they just like cheated Elizabeth Olsen.
Oh yeah.
They were like, "Well, bye."
But like I don't understand why they had to do multiverse like that. I understand that you needed to bring in the multiverse, but it was way too many new things and way too many things that the people had already needed to watch before watching this movie. You
Mhm.
have to understand that people might not watch the show. For example, I'm not going to give any spoilers, but they do talk about Loki in the new Deadpool Wolverine. I
Yeah.
hadn't seen any of Loki, but to be honest, you didn't need it.
Mhm.
You didn't need to have to watch that before the movie. But I felt like you needed to watch WandaVision before you watched Multiverse. And I don't think Multiverse was well done either. Like, I hate. What's her name? The kid. America or something?
Oh, yeah.
I think she's such a stupid character. I I could probably talk about MCU forever, but like just to do a quick like shutdown on it,
Mhm.
WandaVision was a masterpiece.
Yeah.
It was ultimately trashed by Multiverse, and I think the character development and new characters were dog shit.
I think that's why
Except for the Scarlet Witch. I love her. I
I
will
think
literally
that's
like
why
mwah.
it fell so far down on my TV shows list is just because a lot of the way that I rank them is how impactful to the MCU I think they are. And WandaVision was really up there before Multiverse came out, and now it's kind of
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
eh.
I definitely agree.
I
Like I
still think
can't
it's an
even be mad
incredible
about your
show, though.
ranking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was super well done. I love the shift through all of the ages of television. It's great.
I do, but
Yeah.
alas, we can't have nice things.
Yeah. Moving on. Scary things. Do you have a word?
Whatever.
Do you have a word at all?
Um, hmm. I did And then
And
lovely me
and then
didn't
you
write it
lost it.
down. Although, right when you asked me, the word hemorrhage, like to be hemorrhaging, like the
Uh-huh.
blood and stuff,
Yeah.
popped into my head.
Really?
And yeah, I don't know why.
Interesting.
I'm about to talk about like spooky stuff. It's not
Um,
curiosity corner time, but that word did pop into my head. And to be honest, it's not a cap word in a negative light, it's a cap word in a positive light. Cause hemorrhaging sounds literally exactly how it does. Cause like to me, the word hemorrhaging, the like G in it, makes it sound like something's ripped open and just like gushing blood, just like bah.
oh, interesting.
But like the sound of the word like directly indicates like what the word means to me. So like that one's a positive light of a cap word. I won't lie.
Oh,
I can't really back up the scientifics behind it, but that's just how my brain works, and it is
well,
exactly how it sounds.
I have a really fun word for today.
Ew.
Yeah. It is, I actually don't know. I've heard it pronounced two ways.
Mm.
But have you ever heard of the word callipygian?
What's the other way to say it?
Callipygian? Hard G and a soft G, I guess.
Calopesian.
Yeah.
No.
It means to have a nice ass.
To have a nice ass.
Yeah.
Is
So
it a noun?
it is an adjective.
Can you use it in a sentence?
Um uh on fucking spot probably. Give me a second to come up with like a good sentence.
Yeah, I got you.
Um
Calopesian. I feel like, how would you describe that? You'd be like, oh my god, Veda's got such a calopesian
I think it would be more
ass?
of
Like, you say it like that?
like a Calipesian pop stars are always the ones to get the attention, or like you're always looking to save like a Calipesian damsel in distress, uh or like I'm going this Saturday to see the Calipesian Beyonce in action at her concert, you know? Like you use it as like
Mm.
it's like an identifier. Like
Yeah, you're
it's
talking about something with it.
it's so interesting to me that this is like a word, because somebody made a joke about it and they used it, and I was like, what is that? What are you calling them when you say that? And they were like, look it up, and I couldn't spell it at first because it's like I don't even know if I can spell it now. It's like CALIPYGIAN or something like that.
Yeah.
And so they had to spell it out for me, and then when I googled it, it just said to have a nice backside, and I was like, oh,
Backside.
I
You're
see.
like, ah,
What an interesting word to use.
yeah, what the heck?
Yeah. So it's fun, but I don't really think that it gets used like ever. I think it's like an ironic usage.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
So I think now
I really thought it was a noun.
I'm gonna say, oh, they're a Calipesian character when I'm talking about somebody who got a big badonkadonk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because then how would people know you're talking about someone's butt?
Yeah, exactly. And I wanna fuck around with people with this word. Like I wanna use it and see if they can figure out what it means.
Oh, another word that we already did talk about before is the word defenestrate.
Mm.
And um my coworkers at work just found out about that word.
Oh,
And so
really?
one of them was like, "Oh my god, you should totally I thought this word was so cool. And it's called defenestrate." And I literally whipped around. I said, "Do you mean the act of throwing someone out of a window?" And she was like, "You know that?" And I was like, "You didn't? Like what?"
Oh my god, you
And
sounded so smart in that moment.
it was so funny. I did. I was like, "Ugh, look at me using these words I'm learning. Oh
Oh
my
my
gosh."
god, using your cocktail
And
terms?
yes, I was just so excited. And they were like, "That's very interesting that you know that word." And I was like, "Wow, I really outed myself a little bit there, huh?" Because they're like, why does Cap know about how to the word for throwing someone out a window. That's very particular, don't you think? And I was like, no, I swear, I was just
I'm innocent,
learning
I
words
swear.
with Vadu.
And then they said, who the fuck
Who's
is
Vadu?
Vadu?
Who the fuck is Vadu? And I was like, you didn't know her. She doesn't go here.
She isn't good. She goes to a different country.
Yeah.
Oh
I
my god.
cannot.
Excellent. All right, well, I think I'll go ahead and set the mood because I have like a
Yeah.
bajillion of these, and so I'm just gonna
Yeah.
whichever one pops in my head is the one I'm gonna share. So I'm gonna start with a very like isolated incident, and this actually comes from my mom a little bit because it's a reoccurring thing, but it's kind of like isolated. So for those who don't know, I grew up in a very haunted town. It is a Civil War battlefield with houses planted on top of it. So there's a lot of, buried soldiers beneath the ground somewhere, lots of unmarked graves, lots of unrestful souls wandering around. And my mom grew up there as well. Let's say it's her actual hometown, born and raised, whatever. It's just where I lived for a while as a kid. And there is a road that went to my grandparents' house back when they were alive that it kind of like, I wish I knew a good way to explain this, but it's got like drop offs on either side of the road because it's on top of a hill, right? And it's like those drop offs might kill you. Like it's like it's a valley in the middle of a whole bunch of mountains, so a lot of the uphill climbs are going towards mountains, so the elevation change on the road is like pretty massive. And this one is you go over the interstate, so one side, if you drop off, you're falling onto the interstate. The other side, you're taking probably a good, I don't know, 300, 400 foot tumble down the side of a hill into trees and bushes and everything alike. And when my mom was growing up, she worked at a movie theater that was in town. And so you have to take this road to get to and from that movie theater. And her brother picked her up from work, and it was like a really, really foggy night, and they were driving along this road. And the way my mom describes it is there was this old, short Native American woman with like a shawl wrapped around her. And she was just walking, and she made eye contact in the fog along this road. And she looked at my mom, and she went to go lift her shawl, and then they drove past her. So she was like, you have to flip the car around. You have to flip the car around. There's a woman in the road. So my uncle stops the car. They get out. Was probably,
They get out?
yeah, it was probably 4 seconds in between.
Oh my god.
They look behind them. They even walk a little bit. No one was there.
Bro.
So she was like, well, where could she have gone? So they just paid no mind to it, right? Like they went home. They paid absolutely no mind to it. They were like, fuck it, who cares? And 2 years later, my mom's boyfriend at the time, he comes flying through the door at some point, and he's like, holy shit, I just saw the fucking weirdest thing in my life. You're never gonna believe this, blah, blah, blah. So my mom and her brother had never told anyone because they kind of just figured it was like this weird lady walking the road that they had passed. And when he starts telling his story, my mom's like, this is familiar, because he was on the other end of the neighborhood, which kind of has the same deal, except you drop into a quarry about 1,000 feet down, or you drop into, the other side is kind of like a short woodsy area and then a parking lot, so like you would be able to see somebody on that side.
Yeah.
But he saw the same thing. Same description of the old lady, same description of the shawl. She went to go lift it. He stopped the car, got out to go look for her, gone. And so they were telling us the story, me and my brother as kids, and we were like, well, that's really strange. Like, you guys never looked into it or anything or whatever. And my mom was like, no, because I mean, like, what do you that we didn't have Google, first of all, and then also, what do you even research for that? So me and my brother did the research, and it turns out that they're like where they live is a colonial state, and therefore did have a lot of, you know, Native Americans who did not die rightfully, I guess is how I'll
Mhm.
put it. So
Mhm.
we were like, she's probably like a Native American spirit that walks around, and that's why, because both nights it was foggy, she probably walks around in the fog, like that's probably what it is. And so my
Yeah.
mom was like, well, I don't know if it's a spirit or whatever. And she goes, but that whole street, because the neighborhood is one main road, so both ends have of the entrance and exit are connected, and you can't get anywhere else. Like in the mountains, when you veer off of a main road, you're gone. It's all, you're not getting back to the main road. There's one way on, one way off. Um, so yeah, they just, I guess, decided to let it be, and they never looked into it or anything. Nobody ever saw it again. They never had like a third person the experience, but those two happened like 2 years apart from each other. And my mom's boyfriend at the time had never heard this story. So she was like, holy shit, there's no fucking way. How, like, what are the chances it's the same exact experience?
That's insane, especially like with such a time gap.
Yeah,
Like
which is
2
like
years is like technically not like too long.
my
But 2
mom.
years with having the exact same thing is
Yeah,
crazier.
my mom and I agreed that had the second experience not happened, they would have never thought that it was spiritual.
Yeah, I would have just been like, okay, some crazy kook was
Hmm.
like on the road or something.
Because her specifically being seen only twice, both times in the fog late at night, my mom was like, that's like too big of a coincidence. Like, we drive that road every single night, and you're telling me the one time we see her is when it's super foggy, and the one time my boyfriend of 2 years saw her, it was super foggy. Like, that just doesn't add up. So we were like, yeah, definitely,
Yeah.
probably like a Native American spirit wandering around.
Yeah.
Not uncommon. We have a lot of that and a lot of Civil War soldiers.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. But yeah,
Neat.
that's my short little intro.
All right. Well, both of mine are still relatively short, but we can do like what we think about it and whatnot.
Hell yeah.
All right. So the first one I've got is named Twin Ghost. So the Redditor said, as the title reads, I had two ghost friends as a child. I'll recount the memory as I explained it to my mom. When I was in middle school, my brother, my mother, and I went out to dinner one night. We're a military family, so we were just recounting and discussing all the places we've lived so far and the people we met along the way. I brought up the very first house I ever lived in, and the two friends I had there. My mom had this strange look on her face, and I asked what was wrong. She asked me to tell her what these kids looked like. I said they were twins, or at least very similar in age. The girl wore a sort of a bonnet with a little dress, and I don't really remember her wearing any shoes. The boy wore overalls and a little shirt. They didn't look the same as me either. My mother, who is a very much a believer in the paranormal, said these children I remembered were actually ghosts. I was shocked, to say the least. I had remembered spending many days with these two kids. I told my mom how they used to tell me bedtime stories, and I remembered exactly what my room looked like at the time. I remember the furniture I had, the position of my crib, how the light from the hallway was shining into my room, where the door was in relation to it, and where all my stuffed animals used to be. I remember because these two kids would sit where the light would come in and talk to me until I fell asleep every single night. My mom told me about how I'd play with them, or how when she would give me a bath, I would look over her shoulder and wave at them. She said she had no fear of them as there was really nothing evil there happening. She noticed that I stopped talking about them or to them, and she asked me one day what happened. I apparently told her that their mother had finally come and found them, and they had left altogether, and I never really saw them again. I remember the way they looked, although I'd never been able to find any information on them. The house we lived in at the time was military housing on Fort Bragg. The land was of older descent. They looked like TV static, but with depth. I remember explaining to my whole family when I was maybe about 5. They looked like the colors you'd see when you'd rub your eyes way too hard or for too long. And that was the time that I found out that my very first friends never really existed.
Whoa.
Right?
Whoa.
That's a little too interesting,
Yeah.
right? Like the way that I'm assuming, it didn't put an age with this story. The now adult, as they're recounting memories, that they could picture it exactly to a T,
Mm-hmm.
especially when they're younger than 5,
Right.
is very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I To be honest, if I heard my kid say that and like he's actively remembering it like nowadays and like you as a mom could remember like instances where you like
Mm-hmm.
noticed your kid noticing them,
Yeah.
I would be like, okay, this had to have been real
Ooh.
then.
Yeah, that's fucking creepy.
Especially the like in the bathtub waving past your mom.
Yeah.
No.
That is
I'd be like, boy, you better stop right now.
But yeah, that's really creepy. I think it's funny because like one of my stories tonight is like imaginary friend related.
Yeah.
Um and when I told my mom, like she was like, "Oh, you're picturing things or whatever." And then
Yeah.
I'll share with it, but something happened and she was like, "Holy shit."
Yeah. I won't lie though. I feel like kids, specifically younger kids, having the oh, I have an imaginary friend equal to as an adult. Yeah, you weren't having an imaginary friend.
Right.
It literally was a ghost.
Right.
Happens way too
Yeah.
often.
Yeah. I think it's a super common thing, and I think it's because as kids we're so like new to life, and so we were just in that kind of like in between realm waiting to be
Yeah.
born, that maybe we're still somewhat connected to it.
Yeah, like you have a different kind of
Hmm.
way of viewing things.
Yeah, and then if you're like me and Lexi, like it just doesn't. I think it's the innocence at play too. I think that's a lot of it when you're a kid. And if you're like me
Yeah.
and Lexi, it just doesn't stop for whatever
Yeah,
reason.
I agree. I
Yeah.
agree. It just leaves that like kind of like door
Yeah.
open, I guess, when normal like I feel like it also decides whether or not you remain a believer in adulthood, though. Because I feel like
Yeah.
if that door remains open for whatever reason and you keep on having these instances, then all of a sudden you're like, nah, this shit's fake. I feel
Hmm.
like that door closing
Yeah.
would just like be like your eyes not focusing on that kind of stuff
Yeah.
anymore.
Well, I feel like
Yeah.
it's like you close the door yourself, because
Yeah.
it's kind of like somebody's constantly knocking at your door. Like that's how I always experience things, or how I always describe it. Like when I'm somewhere that is said to have an energy or is said to be haunted, I can feel that metaphorical door being knocked on. It's up to me whether I open it or not, and I think some people just decide to keep it closed. And then
Hmm.
eventually the knocking stops because your door's always closed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause like,
Interesting.
but this is a perfect segue into like my big story. Cause my
Yes.
big story spans from the age of 5 all the way to the age of like 24.
Oh shit. Almost
Yeah.
20.
Yeah. Um,
Ooh.
so as a kid, I fell asleep in weird places.
Of course.
I
Naturally.
fell asleep standing up. My parents said that I would crawl into drawers and fall asleep. It never really made a lot of sense. But I wasn't necessarily a sleepwalker. It was just that sometimes I would like get up and just go to these random places and fall asleep. And it didn't really make any
Oh.
sense. And so I have memories of waking up to something like coaxing me towards the basement.
Oh.
And the basement
Mhm.
of the house that I grew up in, no bueno. We don't go down there, you know?
Yeah.
It's a storm cellar, it's full of creepy shit, lots of storage, and there's just no purpose down there.
All you had to say was storm cellar, and I would have said, "Don't go there."
Yeah. But I remember things would coax me there, and then I knew I couldn't get down there because the door was locked, or you get to a storm cellar from the outside. That door's I'm not going outside at night. So
Mm.
I remember I would just like pick a place and fall asleep, and like that's I only have the memory of doing that. I don't have any like specific instances in my memory, but that eventually stopped. And then when I was this one gets really scary, by the way. Um
I'm excited,
when I was
nonetheless.
like 7, 8 years old, I started telling my mom. She assumed that I had this imaginary friend before, but I started telling my mom about my imaginary friend. His name was Jacob and he was lost. And that's all I would
Okay.
ever tell her. I would draw him in books. I would write like letters out for him, like they would be his words. So this will come later, but like me and my mom eventually found those journals and it's really fucked up. Um
You did?
yes, yeah. I if I
Oh.
can find them again, I will share pictures because it is
Yes.
like it's kind of fucked up. But
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
going backwards, so when I was 7 years old, I started telling my mom about this stuff. Around 7 or 8, I started like not seeing Jacob anymore, is
Okay.
how I put it. And my mom was like, "Oh, sometimes our imaginary friends move away or blah blah blah," like trying to give me like the it's
Pure
okay
consolation.
not to see imaginary friends anymore. And um so I was like, "Yeah, maybe he's not lost anymore." Da 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 da. Da. Well, fast forward, we move away from the state.
Said house.
Yeah.
Damn.
And my mom, her parents still lived there, so we went back every single summer.
Hmm.
And that continued all the way through high school, like into a little bit of my 20s, but not very much. And it just the trips got shorter. But when I was a teenager, I was probably 15. So between 7 and 15, nothing scary happened to me aside from the random like bumps in the night stuff that I had happen with my family, like isolated incidents, whatever. And a very strange reoccurring dream
Hmm.
where I was just swimming in a very dark, rough ocean. There was a storm coming on, the waves are very big, and the dream kind of happens in one of two ways. Either I sink because I can't swim anymore, and there's this shadowy figure at the bottom just like waiting for me, or
Okay.
there's a lighthouse, and so I swim towards the lighthouse. That's like the way that dream always goes, right? And it's reoccurring. It's like at this point in my life, I was having that dream like at least 2 or 3 times a year.
Oh.
Yeah. And so I could never find anything connected to it, never figure out like what exactly it could mean. But it happened, and it was a very consistent dream that I had. So when I was 15, I was down visiting, and my family decided that we wanted to go somewhere. And I had forgotten my sunglasses in my room, which was all the way at the end of the hall. In
Mhm.
order to get there, I had to pass my brother's room, which is the first room on the right. And there's two rooms on the right. So I go past his room, and his bed was kind of like the edge of his bed lined up with the door, right? So it was kind of like
Okay.
like if you were to walk into his room, it's a very narrow path because the bed is right there along the door edge on the
Mhm.
right side, and then the walls on the left side. I walk past his room and I see him sitting on like the edge of the bed, out of my peripheral, and I grab my sunglasses and I go, "Hey, it's time to go." And I turn around, a soldier is standing in the doorway.
Like in all of his get up too?
Uh-huh. All like Confederate gear, because this was in the South. All
Yeah.
Confederate gear. He is standing in the doorway looking at me. I dropped to the ground. I closed my eyes. I like shook my head, counted to 5, opened my eyes, gone.
That's insane.
It was and then I went out with my family, and I didn't say shit because I was like, I have no idea what I just experienced. But like, even when I think about it now, like I can see it clear as day.
Yeah.
And
Like it's something that stuck with you.
yes, and my first thought was, it's Jacob.
Okay.
Because,
I mean, who else would it be,
right,
naturally?
right. And to be in the room that I used to be in as a kid, like there's only one explanation, you know?
Yeah.
So that was my first thought. And then I grappled with that for a while. And like, my family is very much into this. So like, we would go around in my uncle's car and we would go to all these places that are haunted and we would talk about the ghost stories that come from that place. And like, like we were just very, very into it. We come from a very spiritual town, so we're all naturally very spiritual.
Of course.
So yeah. From there I never said anything. I just carried it with me because I was too freaked out to like acknowledge the fact that what I had fully acknowledged as my imaginary friend may not have actually been an imaginary friend.
Yeah.
It may have actually been something of like a spiritual experience. And so
So this whole time you didn't tell nobody?
yeah, I told
Oh.
people as I got older, but I didn't share it very often. What happened later
Interesting.
that year was the thing that I usually told people
Uh-huh.
because I needed to know. And I have a Reddit post that I posted in The Truth Is
Mm.
Here 11 years ago.
Ooh.
Yeah. And so I haven't decided if I'm going to read it out or not, just because like it's something that took a lot of my life to figure out, and it is something that's very personal. Um but I'm going to skim it while I explain some more, and maybe I'll share it.
Yeah.
So basically what happens is later that year, kind of the same scenario. My family's all out of the house because they were going to go do something. I wasn't feeling well. Um, I I remember having a stomach issue. My stomach just didn't feel good all of a sudden. And my dad was out of town. My mom and my brother went to my aunt's. My grandparents were at their house next door. Um, I was home alone overnight for like maybe the second time ever.
Mm-hmm.
And I still remember like every detail. Like it was 2 a.m. exactly. And I turned the TV off and I pulled the covers over my head, which is something that I've always done, put in my headphones, and I was about to like press play on. I was 15, so it was 20 2009. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
2009. Um and I was super into the Smashing Pumpkins at the time. So I was about to press play on the Smashing Pumpkins or Blink-182 like I would every single night. Um and I heard this growling noise.
Oh gosh.
And so it freaked me out to the point like where I completely pulled all the blankets on the bed over my head and I shut my eyes and I hear this growling getting closer to me and closer to me to where it sounds like it's right by my head, like above my bed now.
Mm-hmm.
And all I could think was, I have to rip these covers off and see what it is because it's not going to stop. But then it just stopped.
Oh.
And I remember looking at my phone and it had been like 5 to 10 minutes. So I waited and I didn't hear it again. So I went back, like I went to sleep thinking that I wouldn't have to deal with it, that it was like some weird like off chance. And then I woke back up at 2:30 something, like
Mm-hmm.
20-30 minutes later. I was still buried in the covers, and I like I didn't think that I was going to hear it again, but if I had stayed up and I did hear it again, I could just bolt before it gets close to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
So I decided to give it 10 minutes, and then I was like, I'll just flip the covers off and deal with whatever it is, or I will bolt and I'll call my mom and I'll have her pick me up. Those are my only two options. And so I pulled the covers off of me, and it was kind of like, have you ever had the covers over you and you use your arms to kind of like fold them down?
Like around you, like when you used to do the parachute thing as a kid?
No, like if your covers are over you and you kind of
Okay.
like use your forearms and you extend them out to where it kind of like folds the covers and it like completely flies them off of you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so I did that, and I am stuck in immediate eye contact with the scariest looking thing I have ever seen in my life. It
Was it
is
Jacob?
no.
Oh.
This thing is so tall that it goes up the wall and then bends onto the ceiling to where its face is directly above me. We're
I was about to
talking
say, were you looking like up at him, but that wasn't all of him?
13, yes, 13 to 14 feet tall so that he could make that distance to be
Mm-hmm.
staring me in the eyes. He had bony black leathery skin that was like suctioned to the bone, and these eyes that were so white and empty that it's like, I don't think since that time I've ever felt emptiness. And
That's Rose.
it was sitting there. Oh god, it's like bringing up PTSD. It was like, I it was, I don't know, it's so hard to explain, but these eyes were like the exact opposite and somehow the same as when I saw that soldier.
That's insane, bro.
And all I could think of was that whatever this thing was just demonic and bad, and it was going to hurt me. And I remember staring at it because I couldn't look away, and it had these like incredibly creepy bony long fingers, and it was like so tall that its hands and arms could extend, so it was like holding either side of my room's walls, all the
Mm-hmm.
while it's towering over me, staring directly down at me. And it, like, all of these teeth that it had were like almost like carnivorous looking sharp teeth with like stains of maybe blood or I don't know, something, and it just stared at me. And
I
it
have a
was like,
question though.
yeah,
So when you pulled the covers off, was it like boom,
already
you're already
there.
looking at it,
Yeah.
or were you
No,
looking at where
it
his
was
body was and you went
I
up?
I laid back and I pulled the covers to look straight at the ceiling
And he
because
was already there.
yes, and I was
Yeah.
locked in immediate eye contact with him, and it was like this chill went through my body. It it was, here's what happened. I saw it, like, this is real time. I'm
Yeah,
laying
yeah.
in bed, I flip over the covers, I see it, I gasp, I look down to see its body and how big it is, and it is like a mist at the bottom of his body that's coming from like the vent that's in my room. I immediately think, holy shit, this is coming from the basement. That's why we aren't allowed to go down there, even though that's not true. That's not the reason we weren't allowed to go down there, but that was my thought at the time.
Yeah, yeah,
um
yeah.
I have the thought, this is why we're not allowed to go to the basement. I look back up, it's just staring at me. It's not making a single fucking noise. It's just sitting there in the dark, somehow fully visible. The hands on either side start to retract back into its body, and I just look away really fast, and I yell at it to go away. And so it felt like 15 seconds. I look at my phone, it had been an hour.
Since you were like looking at him?
Since I flipped over my covers.
That's insane. I couldn't even imagine being like immediately frozen there and just like obviously your muscles must have been taut, you know, like so ready
Mm-hmm.
just to leave and just so scared for an hour.
I have
I'd feel like a statue.
I have never been so afraid of everything.
Mm-hmm.
But in that moment, I don't think I ever slept alone in that house again, actually, now that I think about it. From that day until the day we sold it because my grandparents had passed, I don't think I ever spent a night alone. I couldn't do it.
I wouldn't have. Heck no.
And I never got fully into at the time what it was. I just ignored it because I just didn't want to have anything to do with it. And
Yeah, you're
then
like, we don't have to unpack that right now.
yeah, and then 11 years ago when I was 20, well I was 19 about to be 20, I posted this Reddit post, and I'm not going to read all of it because like I said, it is very like I talk about like my childhood and like very personal stuff in here, so I'm not going to do all of it, but the end of this describes exactly what had just happened, and then it says, to my surprise, the eyes were so empty that I thought it was 30 seconds, but it was actually an hour and 12 minutes. I'm going to try to submit a photo I drew of it, and hopefully you can decipher it, but I want to know what type of entity this is, and if it has a name. If anything has to be private due to incredible concern or anything, my email is an available option. Please just ask me. I've found, or I really could use this help. I'm 20, and here I am years later still wondering what this thing is, because now I see it in my dreams. So please, if you have any idea of who or what this is, please let me know. Update, I figured I can post a photo in a different subreddit, so here's the link. I'm not going to share this photo, but just because it has my phone number on it.
Yeah.
But and I had to like since take it down anyways. But then I did another update and I said, so I did the typical thing and went to a demonologist because it seems like the only thing I could do. I described the height and physical feature of this thing over the phone. He says he's going to look up some old portrayals and send them my way to see if one of them is what I saw. Other than that, I had a dream last night that I was at a party and I saw him outside the window, and when I went outside to try to talk to him, he stood there silent. When a fight broke out, he turned his head. I looked to put my attention back to him, and he was gone. Guys, I almost felt protected by him. It's an unexplainable feeling, but I'll get back to everyone with the demonologist finding. I never got back to everyone, spoiler alert.
What if someone was waiting? No.
So here is everything that happened afterwards. My reoccurring dream that I had. Guess who was in it every time now?
The
Thing.
big monster.
Whatever this is.
Did you call it something?
Yeah, I called it a banshee. Because
banshee?
that's what I thought it was. I thought it was a banshee. And I thought the reason it was silent was because it didn't need to scream. So when I sank in my reoccurring dream, this thing would now be what the shadowy figure was at the bottom. When I was swimming towards the lighthouse, he would be at the top of the lighthouse or at the rocks on the bottom of the lighthouse just watching. When I would have dreams of something like, let's say like a park, I would be, walking through the park and he would just be in the corner or whatever. It was a very, very strange feeling, but I almost became comforted by it. And I was afraid that meant that it was ticking down my like mental until I let it in. So I always kept a wall up, but like eventually in my dreams, because I am a lucid dreamer, if he was there, I would try to make contact. I would try to say something or try to ask what it was or what it wanted or why it was there. And it just never gave me anything. It was just always silent. So
were you able to get to the point where like you could ask the thing?
No.
So you never like physically asked?
I was never able to fully communicate with it. When I eventually got in contact with what I think is maybe he passed away unfortunately, but what I think was one of the only demonologists left in the fucking country. When I eventually got in contact with him, he lived not so far from my hometown, like just a couple states over. And he did all of the research that he could, and we got to the bottom of it, and he ultimately said that sometimes there are these entities that are not necessarily evil, but they're not necessarily good, and so they kind of wander and they attach themselves to people, and they kind of like try to figure out their purpose in the afterlife while maintaining this like nightmarish form. And it's because they're supposed to be demonic, but they aren't demonic. They aren't malevolent spirits. So they have the appearance of one, but not necessarily the actions of one. And so we never really understood anything of it. I stopped having those dreams and I stopped seeing it at some point in my mid-20s. And that was just it. He thinks that it latched on to somebody else, somebody younger, somebody who wasn't so unafraid of it or who could better help it. But we just never knew. Some creepy things did happen while it was quote unquote like attached to me though. So one of them being when I was 20, maybe 19, somewhere around the time that I put this post up. I actually think it's why I put this post up. I had a friend, we'll call him Nick, and he was like not into this kind of stuff. He didn't believe, he didn't have any fucking like, he was like, let's do a Ouija board for fun because this shit ain't real. Me and two of my close friends went over to his place, and he's got like, you know, we had a Ouija board and he's got like this whole setup. He asked me to bring like my spirit box, which I called my spirit, it was called my spirit box, but it wasn't like a thing. It was like a actual box of like crystals and tarot cards and candles and a spell book. And because I used to be a practicing Wiccan. So I brought everything over. He wanted kind of like a crash course in it, but just because he didn't like understand any of it because he wasn't really into any of it.
Yeah.
And when I opened the box, there was this rosary that my aunt had gotten me. And he was like, "Can I hold that?" And I was like, why? And he's like, "I just really feel like I need to hold that." And I was like, okay. And so I let him hold it, and he's just staring at it and staring at it. And I was like, this is fucking weird. So I was like, "Hey, Nick, we're going to get started. Can I have that back, please?" He's like, "Can I hold on to it while we do this?" And I was like, "Do you just are you religious? Do you like it? Do you want it?" And he looked at me. He's like, "We can't have it." And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
Whatever. So then I was like, "All right, then can you give it back so that I can just make sure it stays with everything?" And so he's like reluctant to, but he hands it over. And I put it back in the box, and then we do the Ouija session, and I refused to participate. I don't believe in fucking around with Ouija boards. I was simply staying there to make sure that they said goodbye at the end. I don't fuck with that shit. I don't like that shit.
To do your job, of course.
Yes.
Of course.
I don't like that shit. I don't fuck with it. I think that it's absolutely dangerous.
Yeah.
And I refuse to do it. So
that's why I'll never touch one. I won't.
I sat off to the side. I was like on my phone. I was listening to music in my earbuds. And then all of a sudden I hear them say, "Is anybody else here?" And they start spelling out a name. And the name is Jacob.
Oh.
And so I take out my headphone and I said, "What did that just spell out?" And they said, "It spelled out Jacob." And Nick and I make eye contact and he smiles.
Ugh.
Yeah. Now,
like creepily or
yes,
what?
like creepy for the moment. Normal smile, but in that moment I was creeped out. So I put my headphone back in and I was like, "Sorry, I thought I heard you guys say a different name." Just trying to cover my tracks, you know?
Yeah, playing it off. You're like, yeah. Crazy.
I was like, "Sorry, I thought I heard a different name, sorry." And so Nick then says, "Jacob, who are you here for?" And
don't, bro. I'm not fucking playing.
Yeah, and it spells out my name. And
that's insane.
Nick looks at me and he says, "I think Jacob wants to talk to you." And I said, "Well, I don't want to talk to Jacob." And then they were like, well, Jacob, what would you like to tell her? And it spelled out, I'm still here.
Oh.
Which, truthfully, at the time, made me cry.
Yeah.
Because as little as I remembered of him from my childhood, I knew that he was safe. You know, he was my friend.
Yeah.
And so I didn't think anything more of it than just him saying, like, hey, I'm still watching out for you. That's what I took it as. So I'm sitting there crying, and this coaxes me into joining the Ouija session. Now,
You put your
let
hands on the
me.
planchette?
Nope. I just sat in the
Oh.
circle.
I was like,
Absolutely not. First of all, you never join mid-session.
no. That's why I was
Ever.
like,
Yeah.
what do you mean?
But it coaxed me to go from the corner of the room into the circle around the board to watch them do this. Nick
Okay.
is sitting directly in front of me. Behind me is his door. Down his door is a long hallway that then wraps around to the stairs to go downstairs.
Okay.
They said, do you want to ask a question? I said, I can't. I'm not part of the session.
Yeah.
They said, do you have a question you'd like us to ask? And I said, nope, I'm not influencing this at all. I am not part of the session. You guys ask what you want to.
Yeah.
So they say, can we speak to somebody else? And Nick does, breaks one of the rules, takes his hands off the planchette. And I'm like, Nick, what are you doing? And when I look at him, he's not looking at me. He is looking
down the hall.
up and past me.
Okay.
And I said, Nick, what are you seeing? And he shook his head. I said, Nick, what are you seeing? His door and my head turned at exactly the same time. I turned my head, his door slammed shut. I'm not allowed to see whatever it is.
Wait, so, okay. To ask for a specification on the door, was it a door swing out into the hall or a door swing into the room?
Into the room.
So literally, if you're sitting in front of it, the door could have technically hit you?
Yeah, if I was within the door's, like, path,
Yeah, but
then it
like
could
you
have...
said, it was close enough that he was looking technically past you.
Yes.
So like you would have felt like the swoosh.
Right. I did feel the swoosh. That was...
Oh, that's
crazy.
crazy.
I turned my head to watch the door slam.
Did you see anything outside of it or no?
No. Because my
Damn.
focus immediately went to the door because it was slamming shut.
Yeah.
So I didn't even catch a glimpse. But I turned around and my friends are both like, did that just happen? Meanwhile, I'm yelling at Nick, what the fuck did you see? You need to tell me what you saw. I need to know what it was. Nick, what did you see? Because the face that he had on him, I imagine was the face that I had on me when I was 15 laying in bed and saw that thing.
The banshee?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Especially
imagine...
since you said he was looking like up
and past me.
You know?
I immediately, that is all that was in my head was somebody else has seen this thing. I need to know what the fuck is going on. It's been 5 years. I need to know what's happening with this, which is why I posted this eventually. So he's not telling me anything. And instead he looks back at me, he smiles and he goes, would anybody like to go outside for a cigarette? And we're all like,
it's gonna like go past that?
Do you like not... You were there 5 seconds ago when all of that happened, right? Like,
yeah.
So then we go outside. And
wait, did you guys say goodbye? Like, was there any indication?
This was the last day I ever talked to him, Cap, and I'm about to tell you why.
Okay, I'm listening.
He told me he needed my rosary. I said no.
Yeah.
And then he kept talking in a plural. We need it. We need the rosary.
Yeah.
We don't like not having the rosary in our palm.
Yeah.
And I'm like, Nick, stop fucking around. I need to know if you saw something.
Wait, this is like when you're outside type?
Yes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
So then I'm sitting here and I'm walking away and I was like, Nick, come here. I want to talk to you. And he's like, I can't do that. And I was like, what? And so I was like, Nick, so help me God. I was like, you are scaring the fuck out of me. Something that has been torturing me my entire childhood might have just stared you in the face and you're not telling me anything. And then he said, and I quote, I thought he was fucking with me. I thought he was trying to scare us because he doesn't believe in this shit. He said, we didn't mean to scare you, but Nick is no longer here. And I was like, then what the fuck are you? And then this is the reason I have never spoken to him again. Thinking about it still sends chills down my spine.
Dude, I have full body chills right now.
I had never told anybody about any of this, about anything paranormal in my entire life, about any of my recurring dreams, about any of my... And he looks at me and he says, do me a favor, Tori. When you go to sleep tonight, don't swim.
Like, swim towards the lighthouse?
Yeah. He knew what dream I was having.
Yeah, like you didn't bring up anything about like the lighthouse or the dark space?
Never. I had never told anybody. And
he was possessed.
I looked at my friends and I said, get in the fucking car, we're leaving. And I started crying.
Ooh.
And the thing about Nick that is really important here is that Nick never says goodbye. He had a parent pass away, and so he doesn't say goodbye because goodbye is permanent. So he always says, see you later.
See you later.
And so when we're walking away, he goes, bye.
That's like the first time you ever heard that man say goodbye?
Ever.
That's so weird.
Absolutely ever. The three of us get in the car. I tell my friends everything.
Yeah.
They are just as freaked out as I am.
Wait, so is Nick in the car too or no?
No.
Because you were like at his place, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, we all crowd in my car. They were just as freaked out. And one of my buddies, he said, I'm going to go back and I'm going to talk to him. And I said, I'm not staying here. And he goes, I'll get home myself.
Okay.
So I leave, and he said that the rest of his visit with Nick, it was like whatever was there left with me.
So did Nick not know what happened?
No, he's got no recollection of it whatsoever.
Of like the planchette, the board, the questions, you?
He said the last thing he remembers is the board saying the name that I reacted to.
No. See?
And so that was around the time where I said I need to figure out what this is because evidently it is dangerous.
Yeah, I agree.
It is like something malevolent and demonic, and I do need to figure it out. So I tell my demonologist all of this. He's got a medium. He's got like a guy for everything, right? And he says, here's what I want you to do. I want you to send me a personal item. I'm going to have some people do some stuff. If we need you to come down in person, next time you're down here visiting family, I'll make the trip up. We're going to have to tell your parents what's going on, like all this stuff, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I got you. I sent him a personal item. We eventually found a picture that was similar to the thing, which is where we found out what this entity is technically called. I don't remember the name, but it is that thing that I described where it's like it's an entity that takes the form of like a nightmarish demonic creature, but is not necessarily a nightmare-ish. It's like a trickster almost.
Yeah.
Sorry, still sick a little bit.
You're good. That's so crazy.
Oh. But yeah. And then when I went home that night, I had my reoccurring swimming dream.
Okay, so then what happened?
I swam. I didn't listen to him. I fucking swam.
Okay. Did you notice anything out of the ordinary?
I did, yeah. Usually, anytime that I had that dream, I would be swimming towards a lighthouse if I chose to swim. Like, it would almost be like that's the deciding factor, right? Like, do I swim for a little bit and then sink into the water because there's no lighthouse, no, like, end in sight? Or is there, like, a reachable place that I can swim to?
Yeah.
So, usually the lighthouse was kind of like Cape Hatteras, because that used to be my favorite lighthouse. This time, it kind of looked more like a Hilton Head lighthouse. This means nothing to anybody who's not me, I know, but Cape Hatteras is, like, like a candy cane striped black and white. Hilton Head
Okay.
is like not vertical, horizontal stripes, red and white. So
Gotcha, gotcha, gotcha.
typically it looks like the former, but this time it had the red and white. And swimming towards it, I didn't see him, but I went down into the, like, I dove into the water to see if I could see him, and he was sitting at the bottom. So it was like, this was a dream in which I was supposed to sink and I chose to swim instead.
Okay.
So, and I didn't, there wasn't anything that really happened because the dream always ended when I would either reach the lighthouse or when I would hit the bottom of the ocean. So I don't really know what the significance of it was, except maybe something interaction wise was going to happen if I had sunk to the bottom. Like maybe it decided that it was time to interact with me, but it decided I can't do it directly, so I'm going to interact with you through your friend, and then we'll be able to make contact in your dream. And I just said, fuck you, no.
Yeah. I wonder what really would have happened if you would have just let it.
Yeah.
Like, like not swam.
Yeah.
That's so strange. That's a good one though. Like honestly, twice during that shit, I was like got chills. Like full body chills.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Ooh. Ooh. I love it. I like
Yeah.
spooky things, but like I understand that it's not like ooh cool from someone who physically went through it, you know?
Yeah. It is, it's possibly one of the defining moments in my life, like my interaction with my former friend with that,
Yeah.
because I've never had something scare me so much from, like, to hear from somebody that I can never talk to them again.
So like on God, have you never talked to them
I've
since,
never
Nick?
spoken to him again.
Has he ever reached out to you though?
No. That goodbye was said because whatever was in him knew that would be the last time we would talk. And
Yeah.
I think it wanted me to know that.
Yeah, like it used it against you kind of deal.
Yeah. And
That's
that
so
was when my
weird.
friends were kind of like, okay, what the fuck is happening? Because he never says goodbye.
Yeah, they're looking at him just like you were looking at him, like, what?
Yeah. And it was like, we kind of got into the car and it was like, okay, you need to explain what's going on because obviously you know and we need to know.
That's so
But
weird.
yeah.
Holy wow.
Yeah.
Oh, well, my next one, uh, it doesn't look exactly like the banshee guy,
Yeah.
but it's called bony gray fingers.
Oh, that just gave me chills.
Yeah,
That's crazy that you would
I
end up
know. When you start
picking.
saying that shit, I was
Wait,
like, dude,
it's crazy to me that you would pick bookended things that both relate to like my childhood experience.
yeah, keep in mind, guys, I didn't know what Veda was gonna tell
And
today,
I didn't
and
know Cap was bringing Reddit stories.
yeah, the only thing I said that I was gonna look for was possible ghost stories, and it would be like on my own time.
Yeah.
Granted, is it in a document that is shared between both of us? Yes, but Veda hasn't been on here this entire time, and it says last checked by me, which was 2 days ago when I was working on it. And it hasn't been
Yeah.
checked by anybody else, so she doesn't even know these are written in here.
Yeah, that's
This is
terrifying to me
crazy.
actually. All right,
Okay,
well,
let me
share the
jump in.
story.
I got you. I got you. So growing up, I spent nearly every weekend at my grandparents' house. It was always such a warm and loving place, but there was always something about it that just creeped me out, especially at night. Some of the rooms just gave off this weird vibe, even during the day. There are two particular experiences that I had when I was younger. The first happened when I was about 6. I was staying in my usual room, which had these old sliding wardrobes with the noisy metal and glass doors. they always had this screeching sound when they opened or closed, and I'd really gotten used to it at some point. They didn't really tend to bother me. But one morning at around 6 or 7 a.m., I was about half asleep when I heard that familiar screech of the door. I thought my grandma was putting clothes away, so I just casually glanced at the wardrobe. What I saw next completely freaked me out. Two bony gray hands with long fingernails were pulling the wardrobe shut from the inside.
Ooh.
I was so scared, I jumped out of the bed and I ran downstairs. My grandpa checked the wardrobe but found nothing. Years later, after my grandpa passed away, my grandma told me that he had noticed some of the clothes were moved, and a few actually fell off the hangers, like someone or something was hiding inside.
Oh, creepy.
The second thing happened when I was around 13 years old. I was coming down the stairs at my grandparents' house when I felt a bit weird, kind of uneasy. I glanced over the banister and I saw an old lady slowly walking towards the sitting room. In my half asleep state, I thought it was my grandma. So I called out, but she didn't respond. So I followed them into the sitting room to go talk to her. But when I got there, the room was empty. I looked around the house but couldn't find her anywhere. I eventually went outside and saw her way down in the garden, picking apples. The garden was massive, and unless she had somehow sprinted down there and filled a bucket with apples in a couple of minutes, there's no way she could have been inside the house. When I asked her if she had been inside, she said she'd been in the garden for at least over an hour. I was so confused and honestly, a little spooked. Even now, these stories still freak me out when I think about them. If someone else told me this stuff, I'd probably think they're exaggerating, but having lived through it, can't shake how weird it was. Whether it was just my overtired brain, of just the memory of the hands closing the wardrobe, or seeing that random lady in my house, these memories still give me chills. I don't even consider them the same way, but honestly, if both really happened and ghosts are truly real, then I believe that they weren't just the same entity. The second was a lot less scary at the time, and I wasn't really as uncomfortable or as scared as when the first instance happened. So my guess is that there are two separate entities in that house. That's the end.
Ooh.
That first one got me, and I didn't even read the second part. I just entered it into the freaking doc. I couldn't. The thing about it saying that, like, the hands were on the inside, and years later, the grandpa told the grandma, but he didn't tell the kid until after, is crazy.
Yeah.
Like, that gave me chills. Ooh. And it always makes me remember of, like, when we used to watch Nuke Top 5, and, like, there was some instances like that all the time on there. I remember this one, and it was kind of the same thing, but instead of, gray bony fingers, it was, like, skin colored, but, I mean, they're still, like, the boniness,
Right.
but it was, like, him and his girl were talking, and then, like, out of the peripheral, they saw, like, the like door of the wardrobe like open and close really fast, not like fully, but like a quick little like whoosh and then shut again really fast. And so they were like, okay, like who's playing, like haha, pan the camera over, and then all you saw was like hand come out, and you know, like when it does the dramatic pinky clutch, ring finger clutch, middle finger pointer, and then slowly push out. Dude, they screamed, bolted out the door. Honestly, me too. But it kind of gave me the same vibe as like when these gray fingers were also coming out of the story. But yeah, those are the two Reddit posts I found for today. I thought they were so good.
Yeah. Dude, that second
This
one's
story
got me
takes
in the
the cake,
beginning.
though, I won't lie.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's, you know, a haunting thing that's been torturing me most of my life, but yeah. It's crazy too because like I think that scenario has made me so like fearless when it comes to paranormal stuff, because like we'll go do like ghost hunting and stuff, and people will be like, "Ooh," and I'm just like, yeah, these fucking ghosts are kind of pussy.
Yeah.
um, so yeah, I mean, like I don't really get scared a lot now because of stuff, but like I get scared thinking back to that moment, and I think that if I ever were to run across something like that again, I think it would be like a whole new feeling of frozen fear. Like when I was with Lexi and all that stuff was going down, like I did feel like a little bit of fear.
Like the cemetery story?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
but even then, like nothing is the same as some uncomfortable presence haunting you for almost 20 years.
Yeah. It just doesn't hit the
Yeah.
same, I guess.
Um yeah.
Wait,
I-
to be honest, now that we're just like sitting here and like talking about a few, I just remembered one.
oh.
So obviously it was when I was younger.
Uh-huh.
To be honest, I haven't really had many instances past 10, I want to
Mhm.
say. Um, but this one was in my younger room because I've obviously moved the furniture around, repainted it, a whole bunch of stuff. For reference, if you're picturing the square room, my bed was in the middle of it, like where you have both sides of the room, like plenty of room to walk and stuff, and the door,
Right.
if you're laying on the bed, was down to the right, like the far end of the square to the right.
Gotcha.
And so, like, just as Veda explained, like with the like moving the covers and stuff, that's what happens in this. So I remember
Mhm.
being like half asleep ish. And for those who don't know, I'm also a lucid dreamer, and so whenever I'm turning, it's normally I can put that dream on pause and like get comfy again and like go right back in and not have an issue. But for some reason, I like was originally laying to my on my right, which means I was facing the door. So
Mhm.
I turned on my back to turn to my left. And for some reason during that time, I decided to open my eyes. Groggily, of course. So like half lidded, don't really know what's going on. Just
Right.
came out of that like lucid dream in between thing.
Right.
And I prop myself up on my forearm. So I'm like leaning up just a bit, essentially facing the door. And my door opens in for reference. I don't remember the door opening. For also for reference, I always shut the door at night. Like shut. And so I prop myself up. I don't remember the door opening, no noise, because my door also creaks, and don't remember hearing like that doorknob. So I open my eyes, and I also wear glasses, so my eyesight is very poor. So anything at night is kind of blurred. So when I open my eyes, I just see dark over there, but it's not like dark as in like, oh, it's nighttime, like your room's dark. It's like black
Mhm.
in that corner by the door. My room is blue. Like that like trashy teal that every kid has at their room colored at one point.
Yeah.
So from being like, ooh, a dark blue because it's nighttime, it is black in that corner.
Oh, okay.
And not just black as in like the corner, it's like black person shaped.
Oh, Shadow
Like
Man.
a shadow man type
Yeah.
deal. So I just remember my eyes being like, yup, we're awake now.
Yeah.
Wide eyed, frozen. Like my arms were locked in that upward position.
Mhm.
The the shadow man didn't move. He didn't come after me. He didn't come close to me. But it still had that same feeling of like, but what would he do?
Uh-huh.
You know? But I don't remember exactly where the transition came to when he left, but I'm pretty sure because I used to do this quite often. If I had a weird nightmare,
Mhm.
I would always throw the covers up over my head and just like rock a little bit and be like, it's not real, it's not real, it's not real.
Right.
So then obviously here comes the throw over your head and then
Mm-hmm.
the quick release of throwing it over, like, to back on my chest,
Mm-hmm.
looking back at the same spot, gone.
Mm-hmm.
The darkness was completely just, like, gone, and it was just the darkness of it being nighttime. And when I looked at the clock, it was only about 3 a.m.
Ooh, witching
The
hour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I was sitting there, and this must have been when I was like 8 or 9, I want to say.
Uh-huh.
So not too young to like not remember correctly, but definitely not old enough to where I can be like, yeah, this happened like 3 years ago, you
Right,
know?
right, 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 right.
But yeah, that
Sounds
is
like you
one
had
instance
a
that I remembered.
shade, my dear.
No thanks. He can stay back in whatever 9-year-old time that was. She can keep that. I'll keep
Right,
going strong.
right.
But that is a time I do remember where a shadow man did pull up to my room. And then he just left. Politely, of course. But
Politely, of course, of
he could
course.
have not, you know?
Yeah,
Oh my
it's funny
gosh.
how like those isolated incidents, like kind of stories are. It's funny because it's kind of like where did they come from, and also what happened to them. Like I saw you once, so what happened before and after? Like why that one time?
Yeah. I don't know. When it's a reoccurring dream, that's when it makes me more nervous.
Yeah.
Because then you didn't just show up once.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't just show up twice. Why
Mm-hmm.
are you still like sticking around?
Yeah.
You know? I don't. Ghosts and ghouls and goblins have no right to be in that spoopy.
Yeah. All right. Well, I I want to wrap mine up with telling you what we eventually learned about my imaginary friend from our journals that we found.
Was this yes or no to Jacob? Was Jacob the original?
Yeah, Jacob was the original like imaginary friend.
And this was the person you did write to, right?
Yeah, this is like the imaginary friend that I had that I wrote to. So I had journals and journals and journals as a kid, right? I loved journaling, I loved drawing, like everything. The journal that I have has one picture that I
Okay.
ripped out when we found it and we put it on the fridge because well, it'll make sense in a little bit. Um in my journals, I would write letters to him. He gave me his full name, right?
Oh,
So I had
okay.
a first name, I had a middle initial, and I had a last name. Couldn't tell you what those are right now, but I had them. Um, I would write letters to him in his full name, or I would write letters like on his behalf, like not to anyone in specific, just like this is what Jacob said today,
Yeah.
and they would be full blown like him reflecting on having to leave home, leaving his brother behind, leaving his mom and dad to go fight, leaving everything that he knew because he knew that it was his duty to, fight for the cause or whatever like nuances you want to compare it to. But
Did you ever know how roughly old Jacob was?
yeah, probably a kid, like probably like a teenager, maybe. How young did they fight back then? 14, 15?
Yeah.
So probably very early on into teenager or young adulthood. Um
Okay.
young enough to still be able to properly like play with a kid, you know what I mean?
Uh-huh.
Um so yeah, I used to write stories about him or what we thought were stories. I used to write like descriptions of people that he knew or wanted to remember or that he was looking for. Um, I would draw draw pictures of him and like his family or him in his uniform. And you're talking a 6-year-old drawing like a completely accurate Confederate uniform.
That you probably have never seen before.
Right. Now, granted, I lived in a military town, so my parents and my grandparents very much thought, well, she probably saw something at the military institute or saw something at one of the battle reenactments or something and is drawing it from memory. If you think a 6-year-old can draw a Confederate uniform from memory after passing one at a museum or something, you are insane.
Yeah, there's no way.
When we found the journals, we were looking through this, and me and my mom were both kind of like, holy shit, this is a lot of information. So we looked it up. Missing in action. Civil War. Was never found. Presumed
A
dead on the
person named
battlefield.
Jacob?
Person named Jacob with the last name.
Oh, like you literally found his full name?
Yep.
Oh
Presumed
my
dead,
gosh.
never found.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Did you have a picture though?
No, we couldn't find any more information. It was just a list of names. Because
Because I know normally when it's like KIA or MIA, like sometimes they might have a picture of before like they went.
not I don't think in
But
the Civil War times though.
yeah, but it was just like a maybe, you know, because
Yeah.
like sometimes they would have documented stuff
Yeah.
at some point.
No,
But
we couldn't
dang.
find anything like that. The MIA had like so it would say like the year, the person's name, and then the person who was notified. And in this case it was his mom. His mom's name also in my journal. That's how we figured out that that was the one. Because there were like 6 of his name that were listed out.
Yeah.
Either killed in action or missing in action or whatever.
Yeah, but only one where his name matches the mom's name too.
Yeah. Because I want to say it was like a really common last name, like really like Smith or like, you know, like something common like that.
Yeah.
It definitely wasn't Smith, but like I want to say it was something common because when I looked it up, it was like really, really difficult to decipher which one it could be. So I had to keep looking through my journal, eventually found like him describing his parents and the mom's name matched this mom. And I think it was at that point where my parents are kind of like, wow, this was real, because there's no way that I would have been able to do this as a 6-year-old.
Yeah, there's no way.
Yeah. But the picture that was hanging up on the fridge was a like full-length picture I drew of him. And next to it, it said, "This is Jacob. Grandma says he isn't real, but I know he is. He's lost."
I mean, you're not wrong, though.
Uh-huh. And in one of the letters, honestly, it made me cry reading it back because I think about how I stopped seeing him. But then during, like, Ouija board sessions, his name would be brought up or something. And around the time that I wrote the last letter is obviously when I stopped seeing him.
Yeah.
And the last letter was something along the lines of like, Jacob wanted to thank me today for writing down his stories, for making sure that he was seen and for being able to see him and for sharing his stories with mom and dad and grandma and grandpa and my brother.
Yeah.
And then the next part was Jacob said, "Write this down. All I've wanted since coming to terms with this is for somebody to know that I am still here." And that freaked me out because this was after the Ouija board incident. Like, I mean, we're talking, I found these maybe 5 years ago.
Yeah, but it's still nonetheless after the Ouija board session.
Yes. And hearing I'm still here at the Ouija board session didn't freak me out until I read it in that last journal entry.
Yeah.
Until I read it saying Jacob said, you know, I just want somebody to know that I'm still here. And I put 2 and 2 together, and what I keep telling people when I have these conversations and when I share this story is that I fully believe that he is some sort of like spiritual protector or like guide, or I don't know, just some sort of like protective presence. And that's why things don't attach to me anymore. That's why
Yeah.
I don't go through these terrible things anymore, is because like he's always there looking out for me.
Yeah.
That's just how I imagine it, but I mean, yeah, it made me cry reading through that journal. I know I kept it because I was like, this is like way too much of the stuff that I remember and the reason why I believe the way that I do today, and like I have to keep it.
Yeah, I would too, 100%.
But yeah, that's those are probably I think I've shared like the biggest experiences I've had now between the one with Lexi and this one.
Yeah, holy wow. That's insane. Like, I don't even know what even to say to that. Like, good thing you're still here and good thing Jacob's still looking out for you, I
Yeah, I
guess.
guess
Like,
so.
holy wow. Has the Banshee ever been around since then?
Not that I know of. I mean, I would say if it has, I haven't remembered the dream that it's in.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
tell you one thing, I'm fucking hightailing it down to my hometown if it ever shows up again.
Oh yeah,
I'm gonna
100%.
I'm gonna hightail it down there and go, what the fuck is going on?
Mm.
Why do you guys keep sending me creepy shit?
You guys keep it down
I
here. I'm
there are
done.
there are times where I feel like I want to go see a psychic about it though, because one time I went to a psychic shop, like one of those like occult shops,
Yeah.
and they had a psychic on hand, and I went with my one of my good friend with Bebo. I went with Bebo,
Okay.
and we walked in, and he said he saw it happen just in front of his eyes. Me and her, we like our eyes met, and she squinted her eyes and I squinted my eyes, and she's like, I feel like I really want to talk. I was like, no, I also feel like I need to talk to you. And it was just this like crazy thing of like, I don't know. The best way I can describe it is, have you ever seen a movie or a show where a psychic like hears chimes and then meets eyes with somebody that they know is in need of something?
Yeah.
That's like the moment that happened. And like
It's so strange.
Bebo was like, that was the weirdest thing to encounter like ever.
Yeah, from
And
like an aside.
yeah, and the whole reason we were there was because that same rosary that my buddy was trying to get a hold of was kind of causing a little bit of issue. um
Why?
it still does to this day. So that's what we wanted to know. We took it in because we were like, what is the deal with this thing? Why is it so, whatever?
Oh, so you literally had it with you?
Yeah. We had it
Oh.
with us, and like I handed it over, and both of them, like one of the girls was like, yeah, I don't really see anything, wrong with this or whatever. And she goes, I think you're good here. And I said, okay. And then the psychic lady was like, hold on, can I see that? And she was like holding on to it, and she kind of like looked confused, and then she was like, whoever practiced with this before, I I don't I don't think that they were doing good things.
Oh.
And she was like, I don't think that, I think something is attached to this, and I don't think it's something good. And so they gave us a whole bunch of stuff to deal with it, and like a way to cleanse it and everything.
Yeah.
But they also said like the other lady who actually owns the shop, she held it and she was like, I think if you kind of affirm it, I think what it wants is attention. I think as long as you give it attention every now and then, it won't, it won't cause any issues for you, because it was doing stuff like, my friend had it for a while because she had my whole like box of spiritual stuff, and she forgot to give it back to me. And
Mhm.
she was like, I'm not kidding you when I say that thing drove me so crazy I had to chuck it into the yard in front of me. If you want it, pick it up.
Huh?
Yeah.
So it was just outside?
Yes. Me and two of my friends, Bebo and I think Biro actually, Or maybe it was my buddy Trevor, or maybe it was Lexi. I can't remember. I know Bebo was there though.
Mm-hmm.
We had to go pick it up, and we literally all had to get out of my car and like look around for it.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but she was like, I can't do it anymore. I had to throw it out. It was
Wow.
it was absolutely insane. And then so yeah, we were like, what's the deal with this? Why is it? Because then Bebo and Lexi both held it at some point, and they were like, it's hot. It's like burning hot, but it's not burning me. Like it feels scalding hot, but it's not burning me. Why is it doing this? And then there were just like weird things that were happening. Like we decided to take turns like holding it and stuff, and like holding on to it or whatever. And there was stuff where it was like whoever's apartment it was in, like fights were breaking out, like it was causing tension. It was just so weird. And so we were like, well, it could all be coincidental, but like, let's go get it checked out. So we took it to this place or whatever. And when I talked to that psychic, she was like, I think I need to talk to you about something, but it can't be today. And I never went back to see her. But sometimes I feel like I need to go talk to somebody, because I think that there's something within me that I probably don't know about spiritually. And I think that psychics see it. And I think I'm a witch. Yeah. I think I'm a witch and I don't know it, you know?
I mean, you know it, but you don't know what to do with
yeah, I know it, but I'm not really sure how to deal with it or something.
Yeah.
But no, I think that there's something there. Like, I don't know if they're gonna tell me that I have just that I'm attuned to the spiritual world, or that I was meant to be like some sort of clairvoyant or psychic or oracle or something of that sort, or what. But every psychic that I come across, every medium that I come across, every person who's spiritually attuned, they notice me, and I don't know why.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a segue into saying we're all out of stories, guys.
True.
I won't lie. We have some really good ones. Honestly, I might listen back to this when I'm working on more podcast stuff next week.
I love
because
that
I genuinely liked the stories we were telling today.
Mm-hmm.
They're so spooky and good. Like, and told good too.
I feel like if I were to say, yeah, I do a podcast, and somebody were to say, can I hear an episode of it? This is one of the ones I would send them.
Oh yeah.
For
this
sure.
one, and I would do the one of us three, me, you, and Nat.
The one that's lost?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I would totally hype up all the astrology ones if they're a big nerd about it too. Because, I mean, who wouldn't want to? As much as they do know a whole bunch of stuff, like, it would still be cool just, like, listen in and, like, learn more if they didn't know certain things here and there. But that's so cool. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. For next week's, as you know, second week of every month is our astrology corner. And if you've been following along, you know, I believe we've got 2 left. And I've got a stinging feeling that you guys might be able to figure out what this next one is.
Jesus Christ.
But anyways, remember, Cubbies,
keep it real, but keep it
curious.
Goodbye.